almost over. We're already thinking about vacation.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to reconvene the open session. I have 7:01. If we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If we could remain standing for a moment of silence as we consider the work before us this evening. You may be seated. And Mr. Levis, if you could inform the public of the emergency exits, please.
Sure. In case of an emergency, there are exits at your rear. You can go out the exits and exits either your left or your right outside the building.
Thank you. And if Mr. Murray, if you could do the honor of reading the mission statement for Coventry Public Schools.
I can do that. The Coventry Public Schools, with community partnerships, educate, inspire, and motivate students to be lifelong learners.
Thank you. And just to inform the public, the school committee met in executive session for less than 15 minutes. We started at 7:45, and we had 2 votes. We approved the homeschooling requests and the executive session minutes of 9/12/19. Both votes were unanimous, 5-0. That being said, is there a motion to seal the minutes of the executive session?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that the records of the executive session be kept closed pursuant to sections 42-46-4 and 42-46-5.
I second the motion.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to approval of our minutes, and I just want to make a notation that we just received the minutes of 9/19/19, the open session minutes, in this packet like just now. So I'm not sure if the committee is comfortable approving those, or would you rather table those till our next meeting? It's the meeting between the town council and the school committee, our work session.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that the minutes of 9/19 be tabled at this time.
Sounds good. So shall we just approve 9/12 then?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that the minutes of the open meeting of 9/12/2019 as presented/amended be approved.
I second the motion.
Any questions from the committee? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to personnel. Mr. Levis, did you want to speak to any of these?
Sure. I'd just like to read a little statement on Margaret or Meg Bernardi. Meg is a team player, flexible, responsive, reflective, and has an all-kid agenda. She has played a major role in teaching students healthy lifestyles and has dedicated many years to teaching students to take care of themselves and others. Her engaging lessons, personalized, interest-based, and relevant topics has reinforced a safe environment where students can ask questions, take risks, collaborate, and problem solve. Meg's calm demeanor, easygoing personality, love of students, and her passion for outside-box lessons and projects will truly be missed. She is a true friend to many, confident to most, and a professional through and through. We wish her the best in the next chapter of her life.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the resignation of Margaret Bernardi, 1.0, health teacher at Allen Schorn Feinstein Middle School for the purpose of retirement, effective December 31st, 2019.
I second the motion.
Any questions from the committee? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to coach resignation, is there a motion to approve?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the resignation of Haley Crossley, head gymnastic coach at Coventry High School, effective September 12th, 2019.
I second the motion.
Any questions from the committee? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to the public agenda, the remaining items on the agenda are open for discussion. And questions, should the public have any questions or concerns? If a motion is made before the vote is taken, we will in fact bring that out to the public and then proceed with our vote. That being said, we can start with number 7, the celebration and reminder of the water fire this weekend. Mr. Levis?
Yes, I just want to acknowledge that I attended last year. I know several individuals here attended the water fire celebration last year. They have a nice brochure, and in the brochure, when you look at all the different educators being acknowledged and administrators, of all the individuals, I think half of them were from Coventry. I know Lauren was there last year. Were you there, Julie? No. All right, I'll stop with Lauren, then. I want to play a guessing game. I know Mr. Cowart was there because I saw him with his family. It was just an incredible night, but I think more importantly, it's just an incredible celebration. And if you think about our teachers and their investment, and like I said, so many individuals were recognized. And I know we have several being recognized this year, including like National Board Certified Teachers. And I think I said, I thought, Shori is the history teacher of the year, but then she reminded me tonight that they may not have invited you, so, which is, I'm sure, is an oversight on their part. So anyways, I just want to encourage the community. It's an incredible event. Usually they'll have a career tech program, provide refreshments, so you get there early, and it was just a great program. They had a lot of dignitaries there, but I think it's just powerful. And then at 7 o'clock, all the people that have been acknowledged go and light with the torches and light the water fire. So it's a great family event. It's between South Water Street and South Main Street, the little park that's there. They have it all set up, and I just think it's important to recognize the incredible educators that we have in this community that are so passionate. And I hope that this year will be as successful an event as it was. But I thought it was important enough just, again, I know I've shared it with the committee, but I'd like to just share it with the community. And again, it's a great event. So that's all I have to say. I did submit a list of all the individuals they're recognizing in terms of the positions. So if you have a chance, I would strongly recommend you go.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the committee on this item? Anything from the public? All right, thank you, Mr. Levis. Hopefully some of our community will come out and celebrate. Moving on to number 8, vision of the graduate presentation.
Great. So as they come up, I want to introduce Kristen Capwell, Julie Macarone, Shori Rosito, and Lauren Hopkins. And just this ties in. This is, we had a presentation before around, we've had a lot of presentations on the wonderful work going on at the high school. I think pretty soon you'll see some of the data that we'll come back and present some of the data that we have that'll show the progress that's being made in the high school. But these guys have worked really hard on the NEAS accreditation, which we have the visit coming up in March. And this is a new component, and it really ties into everything we've been doing, strategic plan, our vision in terms of our school community. It'll tie into the necessity for school construction component. So they're here tonight to just hopefully give you a good overview of the work they're doing, that they're continuing to work to do within our district. This isn't just about the high school anymore. So I'll turn that over to Mrs. Macarone and your crew there, and thank you for coming, though.
Well, that kind of encompassed some, but so we have been presenting over the course.
Is your mic on? I just want to make sure, because we're,
There you go.
Sorry, is that better?
yeah, because we want the public to hear it.
Usually I'm really loud, so. So we have been presenting to all of the faculties in the district over the course of the past about a half a year. Kristen and I are the NEAS coordinators. We're very lucky. And Lauren and Shori very graciously signed on to help us last December when we went on a conference to begin working on our vision of the graduate. One of the requirements in NEASC is that our school develop a vision of the graduate, which basically is the written document describing our core values, beliefs about learning. And so as we were going through this process, we thought it would be great to present to you the work that we've been doing in the past little over a year to kind of keep you up to date on where we're going. We started kind of small, and we've really ballooned out since then. We have at various points throughout this, made ourselves superintendent. We've taken over all your jobs in our minds at points, to be perfectly honest with you. It's been kind of fun. It's been overwhelming at points. Certainly, it's not anything that's anywhere near complete, but it's the work that we've put our heart and souls into so far. And so we wanted to share with you where we're at, so that we can kind of get your feedback, kind of keep you in the loop as we're going along. We're going to present kind of where we're at. Kristen's going to share with you what we've worked on so far in terms of our graduate profile. Shori's going to share with you what we're working on in terms of our culminating event, and then Shori's going to present that. And then Lauren's going to share with you what we're looking for in how we're going to roll this out, what are our next steps. As we were working on, you told me that. Okay. As we were working on developing this, we thought it was important to develop some guiding questions for ourselves. The first for us was, how do we ensure that our graduates are leaving Coventry Public Schools with the skills that they needed to succeed? And the second one was, how can we authentically assess the components of our vision of the graduate? So far, we've spent the most time on our first driving question, and this year we're beginning to work on our second. Okay. So we decided it kind of really needs to roll out in 3 phases. The first is developing and defining a graduate profile, which is our vision of the graduate. The second is defining or designing a performance assessment system that measures our graduate profile. And then the third is implementing the pedagogies and school structures that result in the successful completion of our performance assessment system.
Right. So step 1 is creating our graduate profile. So when we began the self-study for NEASC for March of 2018, we had done a self-study, and this new foundational element for Vision of the Graduate was there. We have our learner expectations at the high school, and we have our core proficiencies, but we didn't technically have what they would consider a vision of the graduate. We had a foundation, but we didn't have really what they were looking for. So when we created our growth plan for NEASC for our upcoming visit this year in March of 2020, we needed to have a goal where we had a defined vision of the graduate. We went on that conference last year, and they gave us some insight into what we'd be looking for. So what we did is we took the learner expectations and the core proficiencies that the faculty at the high school have worked tirelessly on over the years. And we knew that we wanted to use that as the foundation for creating our graduate profile. The guidance from NEASC was that it should not be more than 5 to 7 learner qualities that our students would come to recognize as what a graduate of Coventry Public Schools would be. Who are these people that are graduating from Coventry Public Schools? So these are our learner expectations from the high school. Literacy, critical thinking, responsibility, career awareness, healthy lifestyles, government and community, and culture. And when the students would do their Googlio presentations, they would have to address each of these learner expectations. That was the current PBGR requirement for graduation with their Googlios. Okay? And also, they had the 22 core proficiencies. Okay? And through the Aspen report, we were able to log when students were meeting proficiency in these 22 areas. However, if you asked a student what's core proficiency number 17, they probably couldn't tell you what core proficiency 17 is. They just knew it turned green in their portfolio, their electronic portfolio. So this is meant to help students to understand what kind of learners and graduates they are going to be. So again, we didn't want to get rid of these because they were important to our faculty, but we used them as our foundation to create our graduate profile. And this is the draft that we have created. Okay, so one of our first graduate profile elements was that our students would be lifelong learners. Okay, they will set goals for classes, career, and college, seek opportunities, seek feedback and revise their work, and access resources including career info aligned to their strengths and their talents. Okay, we want them to be global citizens. Okay, they impact the community responsibly, show empathy, inclusion, and respect, seek cultural understanding, and embrace diversity of opinion. We want them to be responsible individuals who demonstrate choices that promote physical and emotional well-being, collaborate and compromise with others to own team outcomes, fulfill obligations and responsibilities on time, and adhere to school policies and procedures. Critical thinkers who identify problems, find solutions, and analyze outcomes, seek new knowledge, ask questions, support claims with evidence. And finally, be effective communicators, read, write, and speak across multiple disciplines, engage with print and digital media while developing a responsible digital footprint, listen actively and provide feedback and input, and express ideas and knowledge through the arts. And these learner elements, this graduate profile is not just for the high school. We're hoping that this will be pre-K through 12, so that even our youngest of students in the district will know that they're working on being effective communicators and global citizens and responsible individuals. And it's language that we'll be using from pre-K all the way up to their senior year of high school, and that they're working on these skills as they are continuing through Coventry Public Schools. Okay, so this was really a draft, and we're putting together a team from the district, okay, of educators from each of the schools to come together and to look at this draft and then decide, what are we missing, what do we want to change, make sure there's language that's accessible from pre-K through 12 so that everybody has a voice in this process. And then we will create our vision of the graduate. This, again, is just a draft, but what we're thinking of, something that's going to be very visible in our district, where parents, teachers, students will see our vision of the graduate. And when we went to this conference back in March, the presenter kept talking about how your vision of the graduate becomes your true north. It's what guides the work that you're doing in your schools, your CPT time, your professional development with your teachers, the teaching and learning that's happening in the classroom. All of it becomes your true north. And when we heard that, we thought, oh, this, North Star, and the high school's motto is Ad Astra per Aspera, so to the stars through challenges. And we thought that would be great to go with the theme of the stars, because it will become our guiding star as we move forward with this process. So again, this is just a draft, and that team, we have one more school to present to, and then we are going to be convening that team of teachers who have offered to help us with this. And our next step is to really solidify the graduate profile, and we're hoping to do that by sometime in early December so that we can start rolling it out and working on the other aspects, which Shori is going to talk about, the next part of the vision of the graduate.
So step one is deciding what's going to be our vision of the graduate, and then step two, which I'll be talking about, is designing a performance assessment system. So once we agree, what do we want our Coventry Public Schools to leave as, we have to decide how we're going to assess that vision. So like Kristen said, we took our core values, our beliefs about learning, our core proficiencies, our learner expectations, and we came up with this draft of the graduate profile, and from there we'll develop our assessment system. And from there, after that, we're going to set up structures in place to help support our students reach that, and help our teachers help our students reach that as well. So the first part of that is a culminating performance assessment, and we've had some version of this for about 10 years. I was the first class in 2008 to do a culminating assessment, and it was very nerve-wracking, and I broke out in hives. I was very nervous for it. I see my students, they're very nervous to present and talk in front of, a panel of people about their learning. So one of the things that has to be built into this culminating assessment is reflection and connection. And so one of the examples they gave us, they didn't prescribe a certain culminating assessment, but one that appealed to us was a portfolio in defense, where students create a portfolio of work, but they choose things that are truly meaningful to them, that they feel show those 5 elements of the vision of the graduate. And then they have to present how have they become proficient, or how are they improving on those 5 elements. And so we really want to bring in reflection and connection to the vision of the graduate. Right now it's really rote and it's kind of a checklist, and we want it to have real meaning to our students and be their true north. So when we were doing this, we were thinking, well, if we're having this in 12th grade, I remember like never having to have to do such a crazy presentation before. What if we scaffold it and help them practice? If it's a K through 12 initiative, why don't we have them practicing these skills of reflection throughout their Coventry Public Schools career? So you'd have a defense in 12th grade, but why not have a mini defense where 8th graders are practicing this type of style, reflecting on the vision of the graduate in 8th grade and 5th grade, you know, a little mini defense, 5th graders talking about where have they progressed in the vision of the graduate. So by the time 12th grade comes along, it's not all of a sudden this thing that's a checklist. It's just part of their skills and part of their language as a Coventry Public Schools student. And then the thing that's really transformative, if we're having this in 5th grade and 8th grade and 12th grade, why not have, you know, elementary school teachers and middle school teachers on 12th grade panels? You know, we say there are kids at high school, you know, our kids are graduating, but it's really the district's kids and the middle school teachers and the elementary school teachers. That's their, you know, big kid on the stage at the Ryan Center. So why not have elementary school teachers on those panels? And if we're doing all these mini defenses throughout the district, why not have 12th graders on 8th grade and 5th grader panels and 5th graders sitting on a 12th grade panel? And that's what it's going to look like when I'm a 12th grader, to talk about the vision of the graduate. So we build it into the norm of our practice in our classroom, but then once it becomes kind of an event, a Coventry Public Schools event, it becomes part of our culture, this true north vision of the graduate. And then from there, we have to develop common rubrics to assess this vision of the graduate. I'm a 9th grade teacher, and one of the challenges I see with my 9th grade students is I have to kind of reteach them the language of high school. We're talking about all the same things in middle school and elementary school. We teachers know what we're talking about and, you know, the consistency we have, but we have different kind of language in elementary school and middle school and high school. So I have to kind of reteach them the language of high school. And so with the vision of the graduate, by having common rubrics, it's going to have a unified language K through 12 within the elementary schools, within the middle school, within the high school, so that those transitions are easier for students. And again, it's not this poster on a wall, it's really their vision that they're owning as well. And then the last step is looking at our authentic assessments in our class. An authentic assessment is doing a real thing, assessing a real skill, and again, creating meaningful tasks for students that they're demonstrating these skills that are in the vision of the graduate. And so long-term here, our long-term plan is, that's okay. So first, again, we have to get everybody on board, K through 12. What is our vision of the graduate? Make sure that it's known by all, it's announced and known by all. Then we're gonna create rubrics, again, that are gonna assess this vision of the graduate. We're gonna have teachers calibrating to determine what's evidence that shows the vision of the graduate, and really teaching students to explain what they're doing and reflect on their work based on these skills, and then having high expectations for all students. Very good. Next up is Lauren.
When we hear all of this laid out, we realize that this seems like a very daunting project that we're getting ourselves into. And in our excitement, you know, we didn't want to get carried away and not step back and recognize how much time this is really going to take. Because what we want to create is a sustainable system that becomes a part of our community and a part of our school culture, our district culture. And so this is something that's going to take several years to fully implement. So we want to make sure you're aware that we recognize that and we're taking steps to prepare. So our first phase is, we're in it right now. This is it. So creating our shared vision of the graduate, that true north, that includes input from all stakeholders. And we've been very encouraged presenting at each of the different schools so far about how receptive the teachers, the administrators, the staff have all been, because this is something that is about kids and it's about creating this great community for learners and for teachers as well. And we've had a great amount of support from central office as well. So we're really excited about working to create this shared vision and get feedback from pre-K through 12 teachers. So that's where we are right now. We're hoping to shore this up, the vision, by December, and then we're gonna move forward with phase 2. So phase 2 and phase 3 actually are gonna kind of work in conjunction, because what we need to do is create, as Shori mentioned, those shared district-wide rubrics for proficiency. The performance-based assessments that we're currently using there are many that are really great and they're authentic, but we might need to ramp up that work a little bit more, revise to include some more authentic assessments across grade levels. I know we're doing some at the high school, and I know there's some going on at all levels, but to have some more consistency and just really making sure we have that rigor and that authenticity for students. Right now, our common planning time, there never seems to be enough of it, but what we do know we need to do is center some of that time around the vision of the graduate work and really take time not only to create the rubrics, but to calibrate so that a third grade teacher at Washington Oak is assessing in the same manner that a third grade teacher at Tyoke School is and at Western Coventry, and so that there's that consistency across the grade levels, across the schools within the district. Phase 3. So we need to, if we're creating these rubrics, we need to know what is the ultimate goal, what are we looking to assess? So that we want to create the portfolio and defense system that begins in elementary school, expands in middle, and culminates at the high school. And we were so excited about this process when we were talking at the conference, and we know the logistics of this. I'm going to let you guys figure some of that out, but the logistics of this, it's going to be difficult to organize. However, for those, and I think most of us were all there at graduation this past year, when we formed the pre-K through 12, educators formed that tunnel for the students to walk through, and kids were seeing their second grade teachers who showed up for their graduation, and there were tears all around. I'm a crier, so it was me too, but there was so much, and it meant so much to those kids, and it meant so much to the teachers, because there are kids, whether they were our kids as kindergartners or our kids as 12th graders. So if we did this and we had those teachers sitting on the panels at the different levels, and we had a 12th grader going down and sitting on a 5th grader's presentation panel, we just thought that would really, it would be create a vibrant learning culture and community within Coventry. And that's really the ultimate goal. That's what we want to do. Phase 4 is where we're looking to create the supports and structures that will ensure students achieve the vision of the graduate. So that's the professional development, that's the common planning time, that's the calibration time, all of the things that we know we're going to need to provide time and resources to set this program up for success. So this is not, oh, we're going to have this done by next year. We're looking probably 5 to 8 years at least before we have this as a really fully functioning system. So this year, as we're working on phases 2 and 3 and getting those educators and administrators from all the different levels together, I think that just the support from you all and support from central office, I really think this could be something amazing for Coventry kids and Coventry families. Because if the parents are talking about it when they're at the sporting events, and it doesn't matter if the kid's at Tyoke or if the kid's at Western, and they're all talking about, yep, the kids are working on, they're becoming global citizens, they're becoming effective communicators, and it's language that we can all share together. So there was one more thing too, and Julie might want to jump in on this, but Rhode Island Department of Ed is going to be looking very closely, and they want to see what we roll out because they want everyone to roll it out. So I don't know if you want to speak.
Well, they had, so RIDE is beginning to jump up. So I don't know if you know this, but we're actually going to be the second school, that will be evaluated with the new NEASC standards. We're only the second school in New England. And so RIDE, when they came, they were at our school for something else, and we were talking about the vision of the graduate, and I happened to be sitting next to the representative from RIDE, and I was talking with someone else about our vision of the graduate and our presentation, and her eyes lit up, and she's like, you have something on vision of the graduate? And I was like, oh yeah, we've been doing this. She's like, can you send me everything? And at the time I was a little protective of it, and so I didn't. But she's like, we're going to be, we're starting this, and we're going to be requiring schools in the next 5 years to develop this vision of the graduate. And I was just thinking to myself, we are so far ahead of where everyone else is going to be on this, because this is what RIDE is beginning to put together, and we're already, so far ahead of the curve on this. So, but I think this is we just wanted to keep you guys informed of where we're at and, the work that's being done. And I think it's going to be great.
Yeah, and some of the work that RIDE has been doing with the Learning Champions for the rubrics for across the state, many members of our faculty have worked on that. Many of those rubrics align with the graduate profile that we're creating. So as we create our rubrics, we are also going to be hopefully going to be able to pair them with the RIDE rubrics or use those RIDE rubrics as well to work for us, because we know that that's what they're rolling out as well.
Exciting, very exciting work. Did either of you, did you want to speak before I ask the?
Say a couple things is that I think when we talk about leadership, you know, when people have this picture of leadership, and I think what hopefully the community sees, what you see though, it's leadership in Coventry is distributive. It's at everywhere. I mean, you guys talk a lot, you know, it's child focused, student focused, but it's about student leadership. You know, we're talking about assessments. In the past, they've been everybody does the same thing, and they're talking about incorporating like universal design for learning. So how we assess kids, how students present is going to be crucial. And I think it's about that voice that we always talk about at all levels, you know, talking about empowering, you know, going down to pre-K, because we talk about this a lot.
I
We
know, it's a
bring
great idea.
bits and pieces
It
right,
has to happen.
to show the committee and the community, but this pulls it all together. Our strategic plan ends at the end of this year, and we've done the crosswalk, taken a look, and this is gonna, you know, we hope that this will drive the next phase. And but these guys have been, the work they've been doing has been phenomenal, but you've been pulling it from everybody. So you know, they came to us and the administrators and presented maybe 20, 25 minutes, but more questions, right? That's a great presentation when people left with more questions. So I just want to thank you, and I think this community needs to be so proud of the work that you're doing, but it's really the work the district's doing that you guys have been a catalyst for, so thank you.
So I'd like to start with James. Any comments, questions for our panel here?
Obviously, glad to see the good work and the hard work, and looking forward to when you're complete. I know that's how you started. Looking forward to see what that really looks like. But exciting stuff. Thank you.
Donna?
I also agree. I think this is wonderful. I mean, this is something that, you know, we really need, and to be that far ahead of the curve is amazing. I just have one question. Have you thought about tracking the success of graduates after high school? To kind of put in perspective, this is what we, you know, did, and well, how did our kids do after they left high school? You know,
Not officially. I mean, I have just the students that I correspond with and that, you know, that write me. And I think a lot of us keep, you know, in touch with our graduates and, you know, but I don't know that we.
That's a good, I mean,
Yeah,
private
it's a
schools,
great
right? Like,
idea,
there's a
but
lot
I
of things
don't
that private schools do that we should do. From special education, we do tracking, we have to do these longitudinal, like to see where students with disabilities are, you know, 2 years after they graduate, but we should do that with all kids. I think that's a great
just to
idea.
show our success rate.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, say, you know, you implemented this and you find that, you know, 30% more students are going and graduating from college and they're getting successful jobs.
Yeah, or a
Than
trade
they
school or
did
the
before this was
military or.
implemented. Then, you know, this would be a successful program.
Yeah.
So,
And I think
Definitely.
a big part of this work is, you know, the encouraging the student reflection and them looking back at themselves. But I think absolutely as a staff and as a district, we would need to then cull through that data and say, okay, well, you know, let's reflect. Where have we grown? What have we done well? What do we need to work on? So I
right,
think
you
that's
just, you know,
absolutely
where your opportunities are and, you know, what your strengths are. I do this all day long, so. I'm all set.
All right, Luke.
Your enthusiasm is infectious. I love it. That was a great presentation. You should be extremely proud of yourselves for taking a leadership role and really taking this to kind of the higher level. It's clear you put in a ton of effort into this, and you could have just kind of checked the box, right? But you're not. You're kind of shooting high, shooting to the stars, so to speak, and really taking a big vision. I know. Yeah. Well, when I sat down, I think it was a couple months ago, I sat down with Mr. Cowart, and one of my surprises was that, you know, our curriculum wasn't fully aligned across the whole entire grade levels. It was sort of frustrating for me to sort of see how that is. And I'm like, you know, after all this time, we haven't gotten there. But to hear you talk about having teachers from other schools provide input and be part of that process and working together to take that child from K through 12, you know, including my own children who are in the system, it's great to hear not only as a school committee member, but as a parent, to feel like your child is part of the system and it's one system. We always talk about inclusion, right? that's the big theme this year at Western, which my kids are in, is inclusion. And it's kind of something we're creating a culture of here. And yet, you know, we haven't had inclusion among our own schools. So really hearing teachers between the different grade levels and aligning those curriculums. So I like the fact that you're also having realistic timeframes and not overshooting, because I think that kills projects where you say, "Oh, I'll get it done in a year," and then you don't reach that time frame, and then you're not there, and then the whole thing kind of fizzles out, right? So having a 5 to 8 year, that's fine. And then what else did I have here? I was writing down like my notes here, but I guess to boil it down, the last thing I'll say is what I'm finding more and more as I talk to employers, and having been both private and municipal, is a lot of the soft skills and like not so much knowing, and while it's important to know the hard skills, how to look up information, how to learn, how do you teach an individual how to find out things for themselves and continue to grow and learn through their lifetimes. So I like the lifelong learner, because really, as you know, you get jobs and you have to continue to learn. And it's very difficult to teach somebody who's unteachable, especially as an employer, having been an employer myself. So I'll stop talking, but thank you so much. It's great, and I'm looking forward to the end product. A long ways away from now, I know. But
I think it was easy for us because we all have children in the district as well. And I think that when we were doing this, we could have checked the boxes and just said, make this a high school. And then we stopped and said, well, and I know we're all pretty much perfectionists. And we said, well, if we're going to do something, then we're going to do it right. And we're not going to do something that we've been on the receiving end of. And it's let's just do it has to be done right. And so let's do it the right way if we're going to do something.
and it's clear that you've done that. Very last thing is we mentioned tracking, which is a great idea, but that doesn't have to necessarily be done in-house. My suggestion was you have RIDE, who's really interested in this, that maybe try to approach them and say, hey, listen, would you be interested in doing a kind of a profile project and carry that through? Or would like to engage somebody who's doing some sort of research for a master's thesis, things like that? Because there's a ton. I've done papers on education where I've used resources like this. This is a great project for somebody who's doing research to kind of track through time, and maybe there's somebody who might pick it up on a grant to do that. So thank you.
Thanks, Luke.
Well,
Dave?
thank you. As someone who has been involved in this project, not with you, but on the public school to jail synopsis, there is a drawer that's in the principal's office of all the kids who don't show up for their graduations. And I happen to know one of those kids, and he was one of my son's friends. And I saw the principal at the time, and I said, could I have the diploma for so-and-so so I could give it to him? That may be a place to start, to see who these kids are, why they didn't show up for graduation, and where are they now? Another resource would be the alumni, to check with the Alumni Association and see how they're doing and where, and checking on the graduates themselves, which is in line with what Donna said and what I've been suggesting for a long time, is that you check on the graduates and see who failed college, who made it through college, and why. Why did one kid make college and why another kid didn't? And just because a child doesn't make it in college doesn't necessarily mean they're not going to be successful. My own son, when he graduated high school, I remember one politician said to me, he said he's going to be lucky if he works at McDonald's, which was a complete insult. Now he works for the mayor's office, for the city council's office in the city of Providence. Yes, he had his problems at the high school, like most kids do. You have to take that into consideration when you're checking on this and see where they are. If somebody went to jail, why did they go to jail? What was the disconnect? Why did a kid in college all of a sudden make the decision, the poor judgment, to rob a convenience store? What's going on? Why would a Bryant College student do something like that? That's what I'm concerned about: the success and the and the failures. And we've had some marvelous successes. We really have. We have successful alumni. But we also have some that are homeless. I met them today. I gave them a couple of bucks. I mean, we've had some failures, and it'd be nice to get some information on that so we could prevent any problems in the future. So I think you're doing wonderful. I think you're doing God's work, and thank you. And just some suggestions. That's all. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Dave. I just want to follow up again with how exciting this work must be for you and for us to even see it happen. I'm just really gratified to see this a district-wide initiative. And that whole idea of, well, I just loved graduation this year with all the teachers there. That was just an awesome thing to see. It was just awesome because it is true. The kids who graduate and come through the school system, they have the teachers all the way through that to see them at graduation must have been so heartwarming for them and also for the teachers too, to be invited and encouraged to come. So I just think that's a great idea, and I love the idea of you having the panelists come back from the different schools to have that connection, because that's really what it's about. I've sat here a while and I've heard from the community and from teachers who say, you know, we get the kids in middle school and, you know, mistakes were made in the elementary and, you know, we get them. And then the high school teacher goes, yeah, well, we just got these kids and, you know, it's because they didn't do this or this in the middle school. And, you know, it's hard to evaluate what's happening if you're not part of that picture. And so I think the fact that you're all going to collaborate together and look to see what that vision is every step of the way and invite them back, you know, invite them all into those different environments, I think just can only be a wonderful, wonderful thing. So I applaud all of your efforts. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about this vision. And like Mr. Murray said, I know it's a big job. NEASC accreditation is huge. And all of the things that go onto that. We've had some presentations. We know that the work that has to get done on that. So I'm really pleased that all of you are involved with this and you've taken on this leadership. Like Mr. Levis says, it's heartwarming to see your excitement and your enthusiasm and your leadership. So we thank you and we look forward to hearing more and getting some updates.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming and presenting. It was a great presentation. Were there anyone from the audience that might have had any questions or comments from our teachers? Could you just tell us who you are too for the record? Okay, thank you so much. Okay, moving on to number 9, and if the teachers want to leave because you've got work to do, go, feel free. We'll say goodbye and thank you again for.
Yeah, 7 o'clock comes early.
I know. 10 minutes of 5 comes early for me too. Anyway, thank you so much. Okay. I'm at work at 6:30. Yeah, I know. So number 9, I think is the next one. Is that true? Yes. Am I right? Okay, so the necessity, it was our reference number 5, and the update and discussion.
Right.
Mr.
So,
Levis, did you want to
so
start this?
yes. So first thing is I just want to thank everybody in the council. I thought the meeting that we had last Thursday was a great meeting. I think that just the outcome of it in terms of getting, it seems like some momentum and agreement to move forward and to at least get the building committee established. I'm hoping that that'll take place on the 15th at the at the town council meeting, and so we can put a letter of intent in. And again, I just want to thank. I thought it was very positive and a good meeting. The outcome of that meeting was we said there were a lot of things that need to be done, and so that's what you see in front of you in the packet. There's two documents. The first one is just list of meetings that we're gonna have at the different schools. And it's an aggressive calendar, but there's only so much time. So we wanted to get this to you as soon as possible. And these will be meetings that Studio Jade will present, we'll be there. And it'll be a great opportunity in the schools to talk about each school and talk about the process, to make people aware. Again, what we had talked about at that meeting was, getting out there and, putting an aggressive timeline together. And the dates really, the way we did is we looked at what dates were free, and then it was kind of a first come, first serve in terms of the schools, trying to get those dates, because there's a lot of, coordination, and Studio Jade individuals needed to be present. And we needed to have openings in the calendar. So that's the first part. Then the second page is those are incorporated in, but this is an aggressive timeline again. We had talked about at the meeting, and I say we, different individuals had talked about presenting or having updates at the town council on a regular basis, obviously updates here. So we put in as all the different timelines, the meetings. Again, the highlighted ones, the blue, are Studio Jade can be present to give updates at those meetings. And this just gets us to stage one. And stage one, and I was at McDonald's today and trying to clarify, because there's a lot of information out there. People are saying things like, we are not throwing numbers out. We are, and Sarah, Mrs. Mangiarelli had said that, I've said that, I hope the committee feels that way. If we don't get the stage one, which is really just a needs assessment, showing the community what the needs are, that's all we're doing. I feel like as superintendent, that's my responsibility. If I can't get to that part, I feel that it's negligence. And I know that's a strong word, but I truly believe that. Getting people into our schools, to say that the quality of education is not impacted by our environment, is just not true anymore. And so all we're doing here is going to be laying out to the community what the needs are. And that's it. There's no commitment from anybody. At the end of the day, the community decides whatever we do. And I'm cautious because people say, well, what about this? What are you going to do there? It's like, and I just say, that's up to the community. But we need to get this out there. And I feel that this is an aggressive timeline, and we're committed to doing this. And we're going to do as much as we can in terms of publicizing to get people out to these meetings. I appreciate Sarah's at her children's open house tonight, so that's why she's not here, but she worked aggressively. Right after that meeting, she went and met with Mr. Conti, who presented, and they worked out the details, and I said I would fully support it. And so I just wanted to lay that out there to you. But again, we have not made a commitment. People are asking me, what's going on with Tyre? What are you doing? I was like, I have no idea. I have no idea. Our responsibility, though, is to get this to the community, the facts, and have these sessions where people can answer any questions, ask any questions. I feel that it'll be a concise presentation, but it'll be specific to the process, and then some information we have about those individual schools. I think that's important. So that's the update. The other part, and then open to discussion, was I was made aware that there was something at the last town council meeting pertaining to the necessity of school construction. It happened to be a conversation about a sewer tie-up, which I will put on the agenda for next school committee meeting to discuss. No, you had left. But you did a great job on the report, Dave. I did watch that. So, but I would suggest, and all I'm saying is I would suggest to the school committee and to anybody, if you go into the video, it's on YouTube Live. It's the 23rd, September 23rd town council meeting. And I would say for like 1 hour and 40 minutes into it, you'll see the conversation, the discussions. But we will put it on the next agenda and I'll discuss. But
Mr. Levis, what I found interesting at that meeting was that they asked for applications for the zoning board, the planning board, some other boards, but they didn't mention anything about school building committee.
yeah, well, I can't control that.
They
I mean,
still have a time.
yeah.
Point till the 15th.
So we had sent out. I sent the list. I think it was recommended by, I don't know if it was Mr. Pearson, Mr. Murray, but I sent the list that we had. We shared that information with contact information. We also had, I believe, 3 individuals that had already gone through the process. I've had several people contact me, and I forward that. I told them, I would forward the information to them. So But I think we did have, it seemed like we had a commitment, you know, again, I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but I felt like we had a commitment to, you know, get this to the 15th and a commitment to, you know, to get, at least get to the letter of intent. And then we have till January, we have January 15th letter of intent, but we want to expedite that. We have till February something to
15th or 17th.
15th, 17th for the stage one. So I feel that, you know, we know it's budget season. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but I feel, you know, this is very important for us to do. I feel that I know we have the support of the school committee. And again, this is no commitment. This is getting us, that's what that $150,000 is, to get us to complete stage one. And if we do our job well and we're diligent and we get factual information and we have opportunities, multiple opportunities to answer questions, to clarify any concerns or myths, that's been my experience, that sometimes there are things out there that aren't really true. And if we have an opportunity to engage people and get that information out there, then the community will be informed when they make a decision. And then whatever the decision is, that's the decision. But so that's my piece on this. So anything, I'll answer any questions or any comments people have about the process. But I want to thank people for I think it was a great opportunity for us.
James?
Mr. Levis, have you shared these timelines with the council or the town side?
So I just sent them to Mr. Wazika today. I wanted to run, I did share them with him today, but I'm cautious. You know how I feel, I mean, I shouldn't say that. I want to make sure that I give the information to you officially. I know we put it in the packet, but I did share with him. I met with him on another issue that we'll talk about later on. So I shared it with him today. So I said, and I asked him, please don't share it until we meet, have an opportunity. So, and I believe that he will, because I just want to be fair. It's just like when I try to share information with you, if I hear of an incident or something, I want you to, because I don't want you to be blindsided. And if I don't share with you, maybe I'm not aware, you know? I mean, I could have slipped up on something, but that's my approach. I want to make sure I inform people. So my long-winded way of saying Mr. Wazika has it, that I had Ms. McDonald share both these documents with him. So, and I think the council piece is really just, we put on the meetings that they have, and we just, those are the opportunities. And the reason we did that is because we did say that, and there seemed to be some agreement about the updates. And I don't know, somebody had said, maybe it was you, Mr. Murray, about on a regular basis getting it on the agenda. So I feel this is the idea, but they do their agenda, so it's up to them.
Any other? Donna?
No,
No, you're okay. You're good.
I'm sorry, the meetings at the schools, do you want us at all of them or just our prospective schools that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to put people on the spot, because I understand, we know these names, we understand you have a lot of commitment. This is a very aggressive. So my feeling is, you know, we can reach out and I can try to support. However, if we can get them, I'd have to look and see if we could get them live streamed. I had heard that there might, you know, like there might be another way that we could get them live streamed in separate buildings. I don't want to promise that we could do that, but I'd heard there might be a way for us to do that. If we could do that, that would be great, so that everybody could have the information. And I know I'm going to work hard, and I don't even know what that means, but I want to try to get as many people there. You know, it isn't going to be just email. I'll go different places. And when I say I mean, I know our administrators and our educators will, but I feel that this is, I've said this is our one chance to have some funding, and down the road, if the community decides to do something, it might be the largest reimbursement that they might ever see, you know. And I could be wrong. I don't have a crystal ball, but I know even in Massachusetts, some of the reimbursement rates in Mass has been doing this for a while. The fact that we could get up into the upper, maybe 60, 61, 62, I'm hearing, that's amazing. You know, I don't see that. That never happens unless you're in a really challenging urban setting in Massachusetts. It never happens in a community like a Coventry. So, but I will try to, you know, again, if I don't want to set anybody up, that's not the intent of this. So we can, you know, if people can make it, that's great. But I also like to videotape it. I think there'll be other stuff when I talk later on about the budget stuff. I have some strategies that Mr. Wazika and myself talked about. that I would will really work with each individual school committee member and work around your schedules to do that.
I just know that like the first 3, I won't be here. I'm
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
be gone, but I
Yeah.
can certainly work something out with the others.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, well, yeah. But I also want to make sure that this process is supportive. I don't want this process to be problematic for anybody either. So, but, you know, we did say we have to have an aggressive timeline, so,
No, I get that.
thank you.
Okay, Mr. Murray.
So I was made aware of the time frame last night because I was actually at my son's open house at Western. So Mrs. A was gracious enough to give me a couple minutes of fame up there, introduce myself as a school committee member, let them know what the school committee actually does. And then hopefully give them the brief, right? A lot of people don't know what we do. But I also did mention this date because it was provided to me. And I think it's incumbent on, and I know you say I a lot, you know, but we need to get this out there and constantly drill it that this is out there, that people need to show up, because we're the representatives, right? So we need to be out there being at whatever meetings we can to constantly reinforce that we're unified on this front and we want to see this go forward and be successful. So I take responsibility for that. Thank you for laying out a time frame. I think it's fine that you share this with the town. I think they need to be on board and provide feedback. I think a lot of this is somewhat mandated, so obviously you've already set a time schedule for the work sessions with the schools. We have, you know, the town council meetings are set, school committee meetings are set.
Right.
So a lot of this is going to be dictated along the way by set meetings and sort of things that are have-tos. So I'm encouraged that you included the town councils so the building committee can give those reports. That was my suggestion. I'm glad it's moving forward. The only suggestion I guess I can contribute it or ask at this phase is, I know we've talked repeatedly about, I call it a media campaign, but it's more of an education campaign because we're not advocating, we're educating, right?
Right.
The education is going to come as part of these work sessions, but the products that are developed out, if there's a strategy, whether it be a website or other things, I know Jade has talked about it.
So
Is
when that was
something
brought up, I
ongoing
think
in thought?
Mrs. Bacon brought that up, and we'll do that. I'll try to establish that link, and beyond. You know, again, it's an excuse, but it's my real excuse is that there's been other things. I need to meet with Mr. Murphy though. Monday I'll meet with him, and we'll establish a link. We'll put up the documents. We did talk about the town. I think I would be more comfortable with us putting documents up and having them link to it than them putting the documents up and having us link to it, because we're driving this. I mean, the town manager, the town council is extremely important in this process. But I thought that was a great suggestion that Ms. Bacon made, and I will meet with Mr. Murphy. Putting a link up to our website that says necessity for school construction isn't going to be problematic. It's just once people click on that link, I want to have a statement that a brief statement, but it kind of articulates in terms of what the process is about and what the following documents will be. And we can put up all the documents we have so far, and then we'll continue to put up documents. So that's the one piece that we talked about, having that website and that link. So
Yeah, and I think, there's a
You're talking
website,
more
and then there's
about
an
that.
effective website, right? So
No, I know,
I
I
guess
know.
one of the things is, not just posting, but actually guiding people, and James could probably weigh in on this, but, having an effective campaign isn't just providing information, it's providing an easy and accessible
Right.
and understandable way, right? So just thinking about that as we move forward, I don't know if Studio Jade had that any in their scope. They probably didn't, because I know they have a heavy lift with all the work in front of them. But I don't know, I guess I'm asking a question. We've talked about hiring somebody in the past.
Yeah.
About trying to coordinate some sort of informational campaign.
that was
This-
part of
this
our
is everything,
process. One of the work sessions we had with Studio Jade.
Yeah.
Remember that came up and we talked about that. I'll be honest, we haven't gone back to that, but we can. I mean, I agree through this process, and I guess we can decide maybe now's the time when we start looking into that, what that's going to be.
Yeah.
But I think that the easiest part for us, I believe, will be getting the stage one. And I'm not saying it'll be easy, but of all the different components, I think getting the stage one should be the easiest lift. And then getting to beyond that will be much more challenging. So it's never too soon, I think, to
Yeah,
start
I
with
was
the
just gonna
communication.
say, I think my thinking on this is the earlier we start sort of educating and this isn't a new process and then it can become sort of this long-term. So that's all. My comments mainly meant to reinforce that work session that we had, remind,
Yeah.
and maybe as a ticker, start driving down that road now that we're kind of in the process. So, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Dave?
Mr. Levis, thank you for coming to Donald's this morning. Your presence was most appreciated. They like you there, and they agree with what we're trying to do. All I can say is, I hope I hope we get that letter out by October 15th.
No, that's not a letter, it's the building
The
committee.
building committee, I hope the building committee is together by the 16th.
It should,
I think they have every intent. I mean, I can't speak for the council. I can just speak in terms of working with Mr. Wazika. So, in the council members, several of them, had indicated they would do what they needed to do to get that. So I can only go on what they said.
It was nice seeing Dr. Dixon last Saturday at McDonald's, and she would be the town council person, from what she informed me, on the school building committee. So that would be,
no idea.
I have no idea. That's up to them.
that's what she told me. So that would be nice. So anyways, that's all I have to say on that one, Mr. Levis. I think you have a lot of support out there, and we all do. And we're gonna work for it to get this done.
So I just want to thank the fact that we do have a timeline and that it was presented to us. I definitely think that every single town council member needs to see it now, seeing that there didn't seem to be any dissent from us as to that timeline. I know we've got some probably conflicts. I put
I can
all of
share with
these
the council.
dates
I'll share it.
in my calendar already with the hope that I can make the individual school ones. I was a little interested, and I'm not sure it's been decided yet, the Studio Jade presentation that they're going to do at the individual schools. Is it going to be sort of an umbrella about the, I'm not sure exactly, are they going to look at their school? Are we going to do a walkthrough at all with the parent?
So
it gonna look like?
let me do this. So we have a school committee meeting prior to that. So what I'll do is I'll bring back, because
They're working
we've had, I haven't had one conversation about it. There's been multiple conversations. We might have had conversation with Sarah, then with Jason. And so
Yeah.
the best answer I can give you is let me bring that back on that next school committee meeting so we can say this is the process. And my understanding is we're going to go through the process and then explains in concisely some of the work that we've done in terms of, in terms of looking at the different types of space and environment, and then focus on that building in terms of, because remember they said they were going to finish their needs assessment in terms of going through. So, but in terms of, and we have it's a finite period of time. So my best answer is let me bring that back next school committee meeting to you.
all I can say is I was very encouraged. I know it's a tight frame work, but I love it. And I know that Mrs. Dixon is going to really love it because she specifically asked at our meeting for a timeline. And I'm sure the rest of the council will agree that it's nice to see it in black and white. It names the dates and keeps everybody on task. So I was very pleased when I got this in the packet. So thank you very much. And we're gonna get this happen. This is gonna happen. So I'm encouraged, and I don't think I have anything else to say. Was there anything from the public on this particular thing? All right, I guess we can move on to the ransomware update discussion.
So I'm going to ask Mr. Murphy to come up. And I said I was going to say anything, but I would say something. The only piece I'm going to say is that we're still, a big piece of this is God bless you, is working on our insurance claim. And I think I mentioned before, the claim is in two components. One is the forensic piece and one is business interruption. And so we're setting up a meeting with the trust. I don't think I've set that up right yet. No, we're going to set up a meeting with the trust next week because this is new territory for them too. And I'm not going to speak for the interlocal trust, but we know that this, just with our experience with them, this is new territory. So, once we do that, I'll be able to come back. I think what Mr. Murphy, who's been doing a phenomenal job, by the way, I just want to say that, working with Envision Technology, who's been doing a phenomenal job, but Jim's the point person. He's going to kind of remind people of where we came and where we've come, where we started with this when we found out on the 16th and the initial steps that were taken, and then where we are today, and give a little update on all the different components. Because we highlight a lot about financial and those documents, and I'll take responsibility for this. What I downplay, and I didn't really downplay, but for us, that was such a big ordeal. Not even know if we're going to be able to pay people, but this has impacted every single classroom, every single teacher. It's impacted students, and we've worked really hard, aggressively the last few weeks to make sure that we're down to a finite list, we believe, about what we need to do to get everybody back where they were. So that's been a big part of the work that's been doing. So I'll be quiet now.
So that's basically what I was going to talk about. So on the 17th,
I think you know a little bit more about it than me.
So on the 17th, the day after we discovered this happened, we kind of went dark. We took everything off. We started pulling drives. We wiped everything out. So while a lot of the things that we have going now feel a lot like what we had before, it is all brand new. It's all rebuilt from the ground up. And it's been a kind of a process, from building the computers, reinstalling software, getting hardware back working, getting printers online. All these things that we've built up over years and years and years of this organization's existence, we've really worked so hard on to rebuild in just a matter of weeks. And as Mr. Levis said, we're getting very close now to being completely back to, normal, where we have things that break, we have things that we need to fix, but where the vast majority of things that were in place before this event happened are back in place. As far as computers being in place, software being installed, our various peripherals being operational again. In addition to that, as far as the financial aspect of things, the ledger side of the business is running on the new system, kind of completely back to where they were before, so to speak. They're still ironing out a lot of kinks, and now they're bringing the HR segments back together. So we're getting pretty close on that as well as restoring a lot of the data files. So I think that we're down to 144 folders of data that have file names that are too long to be copied. So we're going to have to look at every one of these folders to see why these names are so long, whether it's worth truncating these things or if it's just garbage data that we just don't need anymore. That's just there someplace that we don't need. So that's kind of where we're at right now. We're getting close to being back to normal. And then once we're back there, then we can talk about a lot of the things that we're doing to move forward. I should also add that when Envision was here last time, we talked a lot about the endpoint protection and systems that were protected and were not. So now we're pretty much across the board, all the endpoints are now protected. So we did a lot of work with that in the past 2 weeks since the last meeting. So getting closer and closer. I don't know, do you have anything else?
No, I just think, I think the piece is, unless I missed it, just in terms of the security we have in place now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the security that's put in place now, and we might have mentioned this last time, that our data, our systems are backed up, depending on, but like between 1 and 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Every 1 and 2, some is every 1 hour, I think they'd say, but certain things are every 2 hours. So worst case scenario, we could be back up and running to where we were with the data that we had 2 hours ago.
Right. So it's not like a file level backup that we're doing right now. So it's the entire server is being backed up at at once. So if there's a restoration that has to happen, the entire machine can be restored rather than reinstalling a machine and then restoring data files and all of that. You just can, in one lump shot, restore the entire machine.
In a
all at
matter of
once.
minutes, I think they
Yeah,
said. So, I mean,
it's fairly quick process.
right, we're so far from where we were, so that's important for everybody to know.
Great.
Yes.
Mr. Pearson, did you have any questions? for
Oh, you
Mr.
don't even want to know what's going through my mind right now. Thank you again for the update. Thank you for, again, the hard work. Getting things back up and running in such a short time frame is a daunting task, so I understand it. And what was going through my mind is all the other areas that we could be open to threats, but I'll take that conversation offline. That's all I had. Thank you for the update.
Thanks.
Okay.
Not much more I could say. Doing a good job.
Yeah.
That's all we could say.
Dave?
Thank you, Jim.
Very welcome.
Again, thank you. I think I got something in my email files today about, maybe was it Rissa and Riasbo doing cybersecurity
Probably.
in the home?
Mhm.
Because it's not just us, and I guess the trust now knows, oh boy.
Yeah, I think there were 5 communities in total that
Right.
are covered by the trust that got hit.
But professional development, I'm sorry.
No,
I
no.
was saying professional that we didn't talk about, that one of the things, because, Mr. Pearson brought up a good point about all the other areas. And so we've had a lot of those conversations around how do we protect, and even about logging in. And this is, but there's multi-step process to log in, or verification or identification, right? I don't know, all these things that we plan on putting in place, but also we're looking at professional development modules ongoing. Because we
Penetration
realize
testing,
yeah,
testing the staff as well.
right.
They don't-
And that's the first phase of
So they
it,
don't
right?
do-
So to see where,
they don't
whole- I mean,
consider
some of the things that they've shared with us about how this third party will come in and just, put things around, and how people will take something and just plug it in. And so we're looking at all these things that a lot of corporations do. You're probably doing the big companies you work for, but very few public schools. When I talk to individuals, I
But
mean,
you mentioned two-factor authentication
Yeah.
to start logging into applications or even the computer. That's a challenge for the district, because we don't. The way two-factor authentication works is typically you do it over a cell phone. We don't issue cell phones to all of our employees.
yeah.
So there's got to be other strategies to
Yeah.
deal with things like that.
So I know they've I mean, again, it's, I
Yeah,
know-
we've made suggestions, but
but that's how, I just want you to know, those are things that we are like, we, never want to be in this situation again, but there's a
Right.
lot of things that, what I like about working with a third party for us, like Envision, is that there's these concepts out there that, they're throwing out these numbers that this is what companies are paying. And then they constantly, and I don't understand, I'm sure you guys do, but it's like they re-architect something, like they keep on working on it. And then what was costing $10,000 a month, or $20,000, $30,000, to get down to like 100, hundreds. And again, I don't understand the process, but it's constantly like, it's constantly evolving. This isn't like you do something and you walk away. That's what we realize. That's what we do, unfortunately. Listen to some of the curriculum stories, Haven't looked at this for 16 years, 20 years. I'm not saying it's right. We're changing that. But
Right, we have to change.
We've learned a hard lesson through this. And so, I mean, those are all those conversations we need to have, whether they're offline with Mr. Murphy. But we want to make sure that we're applying best practice, not just because we're a school department and this is the best we can afford. We can't afford to have this happen again. We could not afford to have this happen again for a lot of reasons. So, but.
Okay, thank you. Anything for Mr. Murphy from the public? Any questions? No? I think everybody's like so thankful.
thank you.
And the staff has been great too. I mean, they've been amazing.
So thanks for everything.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, number 11, rezoning of the annex. Mr. Levis, did you want to take
Yeah,
that?
so I just want to say, and again, anybody wants to have, obviously comments, that, I mean, the whole situation, I have to say, just baffles me to begin with. And I know that's kind of vague, but I met with the town manager today. Ms. Mandrielli and I met with the town manager, and I know that this is going before the planning board on October 23rd. I plan on following up. The other part I want to let you know is I talked to Mr. Anderson. I asked him to look at our contract. Told him the process we went through. He had mentioned, and I'm not a lawyer, I'm not going to get into it, but he had mentioned in terms of there's something called good faith, and there's something else to it. I didn't write it down, but he's going to look at it. Because the bus company's been phenomenal. I came forward, I had mentioned I had some concerns based on some of the ESY stuff. We had meetings. I was concerned, just my own experience working with a brand new bus company transitioning into a district half the size population, maybe a quarter the size in terms of land mass. I had a lot of concerns, and we sat there, and I got to say that they've been phenomenal. Like Mr. Murgo, Tony Murgo, one of the owners, Mr. Galloway, I believe is his partner, who's a Coventry resident, whose dad used to run the buses for, and Jess Ogram, who is the transportation, the depot manager. They have been phenomenal, and any concerns I've had. So I just asked Mr. Wazika that, this something has to give here, because, we need support in getting this going so that they can, fuel the buses there. And for me, it's a no-win situation, because if I don't feel that we own this situation, but I also don't want to, we're asking the town, we're going into budget season, we're asking the town to support necessity for school construction. So I'm trying to tread lightly here, but, buses were placed there, a parking lot was built, a fence was put up 2 years ago, right? Because we had buses there a year before. So that's all I'm going to say. I'm waiting to hear back from Mr. Anderson. I shouldn't say waiting. I'll follow up with him next week. I will share information with the committee around that whole piece when I get it. But the two parts I want to say is what I know is that October 23rd goes before the planning board, but the process will drag out until sometime after December. So that's a problem. And then the second part is that I just want to say the bus company's been phenomenal. That, I've been open and honest about my concerns, but I also want to be open and honest that they have been phenomenal. And we've had so few complaints. At least they've gotten to me. I'm not saying they haven't been, but they've been resolved. And that's the way it's always worked. You had indicated that last time since Mr. Martin took over, we resolved those situations. And they've been very receptive and supportive. So that's all I have to say about this.
Any questions for Mr. Levis, starting with Ms. Pearson?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get into the bus company because that's not even on the agenda here. The agenda title is a little bit of a misnomer because if you watch the council meeting where they recommended this go to planning, the zoning change doesn't have to do with the propane tanks specifically. It has more to do with buses being there in the first place, and that's a long story. We've been down that road. So just keep in mind, there's extra even if the zoning change goes through, there seems to be extra steps required for us, special use permits required. So,
but I believe, is that through zoning? I know that something has to go through zoning. And again, I'm not.
Yeah,
I tried to draft this based on what the best information I had. So
nice if the interim planning director was here to answer a couple questions. But it'd be nice to understand what we have to do exactly, in what order, and kind of a better time frame, so we know when this is going to happen. Giving us a date of when it's going for planning is great, but I'd like to know. Yeah, we'd like to know when we can wrap this up.
Oh, I trust me. I mean, I agree with that, and I had a meeting today. That's why I had a meeting set up today, and that's where I was able to get the October 23rd date. Okay. But I was given like in terms of a line, but nothing that I want to state because it's kind of vague and it doesn't.
Well, nothing's determined yet. you know,
Correct.
they're having the meeting to discuss
That's
it.
all I
It
know,
does- It
right.
doesn't even mean that a zoning change will be recommended or not,
Correct.
but, okay, that's all I just wanted to say that the more information you get, thank
Yep.
you for passing it along and keep passing it along, because I'd like to understand when we're looking at, really when is our potential end date for this issue. Thank you.
Donna? You good? Mr. Murray?
So I'm going to weigh in a little bit on this because many of you know I'm actually a planner for Warwick. So I can maybe lend some insight into the process because I told the superintendent this week I'd look into it and what the options were. Because I think it's important that we do understand it as a school committee, because I think you can have a separate argument of whether, we should have been there, shouldn't have been. It's a land use issue, right?
Mhm.
Boil it down. Yes, they're a great company, everything else, but it's a land use issue. This isn't uncommon. I will start with that, in the community I work for, we have similar issues where communities think that they're sort of precluded from adhering to their own zoning. So, which you can actually do, but you actually have to write it into the zoning ordinance. We do not have that. East Greenwich and I believe Burrillville also does have that. When East Greenwich went to build their police station, they actually specifically exempted themselves because it was pushed back on the community side. They wanted the police station to go there. So that is one option that the town could pursue. There's a couple options I believe that they're looking at. One is to exempt themselves entirely from zoning, which would clear up multiple issues we have in town. Obviously, that opens up a little bit of a Pandora's box for other uses in town, but that's up for them to decide. So there was a case law, it's called Nunes versus Bristol, basically established that a town can exempt themselves. I believe the preferred path that they're looking at right now is changing it. Right now, the land we're sitting on is zoned I-1. The zoning is an industrial use. Industrial use allows fuel, and it also allows this facility by special use. I don't believe that when they did across the street, they moved even their offices over there, that they got their own special use permit. So I think to kind of throw this a little bit on us is a little disingenuous, because I don't know if the town has even looked at their own. Well, and I say town, I hate that term because we're all one town, right?
Right.
But I would say the town as a whole, including schools, hasn't always done the vetting on zoning and looking at what was included in that and what was appropriate. I think we moved in well-intentioned and it just kind of got overlooked. So now we have a situation there. They're looking, I believe the preferred path at this point, and again, I don't want to speak for the planning department, was one option was to rezone it to industrial, which is what this site is on. That would allow the fuel use by right, but it would still require, I believe, the special use for the government facility. So it would have to go, the way the process typically goes, and I can tell you from, basically everyone falls under the state statutes on how process goes. It starts at the planning board, there's a planning board recommendation, then it goes to council. Council would have to approve. It's a 2-vote process to amend the zoning ordinance. You do run the risk that people will come out and say it's spot zoning. But given the fact that it's already contiguous with an industrial use on this site, and that we have a comprehensive plan in process, it's unlikely that we'd get challenged. And even if we were challenged because it's a municipal use, we'd probably stand up even in Superior Court. I don't think it would even go down that route. I don't think it would be seen as spot zoning. I know that there may be pushback by some to think that what happens if that property ever gets disposed, right? We know it's not a great building and it's an industrial site, but I believe that is something that to allay people's fears, we have a comprehensive plan ongoing. There's a part of that is a future land use map. And if they align that future land use map with a future zoning for they revise things for, let's say, an institutional use, and we come up with a new part of our zoning table. The bottom line is that could be done in such a fashion where if it ever got disposed of, that zoning would revert. So there's ways to craft that, and I think that could be done later. But obviously, we need to correct the underlying problem, which is we have no place to put these buses. We have no alternative place to put the fuel tank. We don't want to pay more, and again, we are one town. The budget comes from the same taxpayers. So we need to resolve this, I think, for the benefit of the taxpayers, and we need to all be on the same team. Probably more process than you wanted to know. To answer Mr. Pearson's question, this process typically would take 3 to 4 months. So I would expect, and again, I don't want to talk to the planning department, but I would say 3 to 4 months on that if they were going to choose the I-1 route because of the passages and the mandates. And it would have to go back to zoning, except the council does have power to grant waivers. So they could not choose to grant that waiver, which I would recommend. And again, I'm hoping their planning department's consulting because you're sending it to zoning, you're rezoning it for the specific purpose of allowing the buses in the fuel tank. Then you're basically sending it to zoning and giving them a stab at denying it, which we all know why it's going to zoning in the first place. So the council has that power. It would shorten our process by another month, and it would save the taxpayers money. So my suggestion is council do the waiver at the same time they do the rezone. And I'm hoping the planning's looking at that. So, and I say that because I hope they're listening. Quite honestly, this is free advice. I usually get paid for this, but that is a process that they can do per state law. It wouldn't violate anything. It would shorten the process significantly. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Mr. Florio, anything?
As a member of the Planning Commission from 2004 and 2013, I understand completely what you're saying, Mr. Luke. I understand what you mean. All I can say is I trust the the chairman of the planning board completely. I believe the right decision will come, and I also know the chairman of the zoning board, and they're as good as their attorney. So I believe this is going to be settled, and I hope you're right that it will be within 3 months. Hopefully. That's all I have to say.
All right,
Chair.
thank you, Mr. Florio.
You're
Anything,
welcome.
any questions from the public? We're all set? Okay. All right, moving on to 12, which is the FY21 budget discussion.
So-
So Levis?
So I just wanted, we're starting conversations, obviously, they've started before. But in terms of the school committee, what I wanted to bring up was, I'm sure everybody's reflected on last year and the process and, thinking about how we can do things differently, how I can do things differently as superintendent. And I can't speak for the committee. But I've had conversations with Mr. Wazika, so we've talked about different ideas. But one of the things and I know the council and the school committee are nonpartisan, I get that. But one of the things is I was here when the votes were coming out and I saw by district. And so I talked to Mr. Wazika and he's on board. I'd like to have myself, Mr. Wazika, Mrs. Mangiarelli, Mr. Arnett, and I'd like us to meet, we've done this before when we do listening session. I usually go like district by district. And again, that's how I came up about the opportunity to maybe televise or live stream because I don't want to put words in his mouth. I think I had heard that there might be some technology they have or something they have that can do that. But I really feel like that, and again, I can only speak for myself, so I don't want to say we, but I would work as hard as I could and have, as many people to get people there because without getting people there, even though it's live stream, the interaction is what's crucial. We know that we do our budget workshops here. And I can't even, how many people came last year? I can't even tell you, do we ever have a total of even 10 public citizens? And yet this is so important. And we saw, I can speak for myself. I'm never going through a situation like that again. And I don't even know what that means, but I'm going to tell you, I'm not doing that way again. So Mr. Wazika and I, we spoke about it and we felt that this is one strategy we'd like to try. Obviously, people have to agree to it. I don't know if he's spoken to the council. I don't want to speak about that, but I wanted to bring that. That's an idea we have. And then looking at other ways of getting budget information out there to individuals. And that's where I think, Mr. Murray, you're talking conversation about communication and best practices and strategies and, getting somebody that's worked with these scenarios and with other communities. And again, I'm not telling people how to vote. But we know we want to start this process very soon to get information out there. So once we can come forward to you and say, this is kind of our baseline. This is what things are costing us right now. And I think, as you heard, we still have the HR data we're trying to pull back up. We have it, but we have to make it operational. So I'm hoping in the next school committee meeting, I'll go school committee by school committee, we can come forward and say, these are what our costs are. You know, we're also looking at having other types of meetings and conversations, pulling municipal departments, and we meet on a regular basis with our school department and talk about finances and budget. And that's something that Mr. Arnett had introduced, and that's been going on a monthly basis. And either myself, mostly Mrs. Mangiarelli attends that. So, but we're going to start this soon, very soon. And I know there's so much coming at you and coming at us in terms of necessity for school construction. We have the busing thing, and we have, we've talked about food service, but everything's a priority. So I just wanted to start the conversation with you, or just to share with you my thoughts. I know you really can't, say anything or do anything until we have some data in front of us. So that's my responsibility, make sure we bring you that. And we'll still do our budget workshops. We're waiting for the town. I know they're going to be putting out their budget calendar. So we still have no idea about state aid. We can try to figure out some state aid based on numbers, but as we see, those numbers don't always tell the story, because other districts try to figure their state aid by the numbers, and they were short $500,000. Or you look at Smithfield last year was short. It was a swing of a $1.5 million. We were like 1.6, think, to the good last year. Even if things come in the best case scenario, we're talking about the solar, the net metering contracting going out, and that could have some savings. But if our state aid is level funded, I have no idea what we're going to do. We'll be having some long, hard conversations, because what are we going to do? We need to operate schools. We've already condensed class size. We've done a lot of things. So the sooner we start the conversation, the better. Like I said, sitting there, watching the votes come out district by district, that's what I thought. And I talked to Mr. Waziga. That's at least one strategy. We go to the people, we televise it, we try to get as many people there and have open and honest conversations. And, if we're unified together, because that's something that we hadn't done before. We've done our workshops, they do theirs, and then we have that meeting, and who knows what's going to go. This way, we'll have an idea going into these things. So anyways, that's all I had to say about that. I know I owe you a lot more details, information. No excuse. As soon as we have that, we'll bring that forward. So, but just want to be transparent about that. And, we recognize it's going to be a very challenging budget year. I mean, that's an understatement. But we still have a job to do. You see, what I love is, look tonight. Look how passionate these educators were tonight, coming off the year we had. And this is what you see, and that's why I go back to saying, please come visit schools. You see this in every single school we have, right? I'm not making this stuff up. You saw a lot of people would throw in the towel. I've been in many communities where tough situations, they've only had one of the things we've had, and it's a toxic culture within the school. And I reached out to somebody that had moved from the high school to the middle school, and a teacher, and I just said, hey, how's it going? And he said, I expected, okay, get my feedback. And it's like, it blew me away, made my night. It's fantastic. Even talk to me about a student his team's working with. Blows me away. So, we have a lot of work to do, but we have a lot of reasons to do that work. So that's it.
Mr. Pearson.
You are not going to like this question at all.
I may not have an answer.
And you probably don't have an answer yet. So it's kind of one of those provoking questions.
Sure.
Understanding with the new all-day referendum structure in the charter that the budget timeline is pushed up several weeks,
Right.
3 weeks? I lost track. I expect we'll start budget discussions sooner than later.
Mhm.
So when may we expect a first draft at a budget calendar?
So, are you talking about from our end or from the town? So usually we get
Our
the
side, I know the town
yeah,
has
yeah,
their
yeah.
own
So
process.
I mean, I will promise you that we will put that on the calendar for next school committee meeting.
Because I think
Right.
it's something we have
Yeah,
to think
that's-
about. I mean, realistically, we either have to start having our first budget discussions, serious budget discussions with actual numbers, crunching them,
Right.
late November, early December.
Yeah,
Usually we start in December, so
so
I'll
we-
leave it up to you
right.
to
We're-
determine.
We'll be starting, I mean, Sarah's already sent information out to departments, and so we've started that process. But it'll be on next,
And I totally
Thinking on
believe
it.
you have too. You know, it's
No,
one
I'm
of the
saying
things,
is-
I'm just waiting for it to come.
so here's
out.
the challenge,
I
right?
know
The
there's
cha-
a lot of work that goes on.
well, the challenge is that we need to know where we are right now and get a good solid, right? Because it's hard to go to point B if you don't know where point A is.
Right.
So we're still working through, and it's not an excuse, it's just our reality. And I think everybody has, everybody has the confidence in our finance director, our finance department. So I will bring that forward next meeting. We can definitely put a calendar together. The challenge for us
Just
is
even a
going to
first
be,
draft, you know, when-
yeah, no, the challenge is going to be all the things that we've already had scheduled and what I just threw in your calendar now on top of our other meetings and
You
school
say
things
it's,
so
but,
that,
you know, I love the preface to it. I think it was the previous agenda point when you said, we're entering budget season again. It's like our budget season is
Never ends.
7 or 8 months out of the year at least.
it never
And
ends.
for you in the office, it's probably 10, 11 months, 12 months.
Yeah, it doesn't, you're right, it doesn't end.
I know. So we are juggling a lot of
Yeah.
big issues, and that's understandable. So
No, but we'll
I
do
think
it-
the more organized we are, the
Yeah.
better we'll be at not letting things fall off the plate.
Yep, I agree wholeheartedly, and we'll definitely do that, and I'll make sure that, Donna just puts our agenda items on, and we'll do that. We'll definitely give a draft, and I think what's important for our budget process is this is like the third year that our administrators have really taken ownership of the budget, right? So, so if you look at the career tech, Ms. Ferguson, like in the past, and I don't want to say, but like people pretty much told this is what you have to work with, right? Now there's a lot of meetings that take place, Mrs. Andrews will be with Ms. Ferguson. They'll look at teacher by teacher in terms of like there's so much more and there's so much more ownership. But the more involved people are in the process, I believe the more committed they are. And so I think the information we give you is as accurate as we can get it to the point. I mean, there are places where we say we need more money for this, but this is all we can put in there. I mean, that's the best we can do, but we're honest about it. So I'm more comfortable in the process. It's not comfortable with the outcome, but I'm comfortable with the process. So we'll definitely do that. We'll get you that next school committee meeting.
All right.
Well, this is
And
good
again,
'cause-
sorry.
No, it's more work for other people, not for me. So this is a good thing. So, and Miss Mangiarelli's not here. Like Mr. Cower, when you were at the drive-in, we piled your plate high that night. So, yeah.
That's why you're here.
So no, that's a good point. We'll definitely do that. And I agree. Like just like the timeline we gave you tonight, that's a good point to get that
Get it out there.
out there. So, excellent.
Donna?
I think that is a wonderful idea that you want to get together and go out there and do it as soon as possible. And I can only tell you that I could work on my district and see if we can get some, a good showing anyway, of people
Yeah.
to come and listen, and because that's the only way that everyone is going to be informed and know what they're voting on
Right.
come June.
Right. Right.
So I commend you on.
Well, I just want to say too, I think it's good for two-way dialogue because I don't know about you, like we can have a dialogue and we can post questions out there, but it's so different when then you go out in the community and not choose McDonald's, but I go to McDonald's and people, and all I do is dispel myths. You know what I mean? Like
That's
it's
right.
not making headway. I'm just kind of trying to keep my feet in the same spot, and that's why we felt that this might be a good way to encourage, and if people don't show up, shame on them, right? Like but I felt that this would be a good way. Plus, we never have, to have both parties there. I'm hoping that it helps us in terms of having open, honest conversations and without pitting anybody against anybody.
That's
or
right.
It's just, these are the facts. Because I think the key is if we have myself and Ms. Mandrielli and Mr. Wazika and Mr. Arnett, then, we're going to make every effort, and we have been making every effort to work together collaboratively. Like I said, this has been, last budget season wasn't really, like a lot of communities, it wasn't the council versus the school committee. It wasn't the school administration versus the municipal administration. It came down to informing the public. And, and I think at the end of the day, the grassroots campaign that took place afterwards did a much better job informing the public, knowing that we got to start that from day one.
And that's it. And like Mr. Murray said, we're one town. It's not the school committee against the town council. Right. It's, we're one town, and we've got to get out there and educate people, right. Basically. Let them know, exactly where their tax money's going.
Right. And maybe have more opportunity, and I don't know how you guys feel, but maybe more opportunities to have joint meetings. And again, I know there's only so much time. I know people work at night, but I feel that, I don't know. And again, I know the town controls that whole thing, but I don't really like the way we have the joint meeting. I feel like, okay, we do a presentation. There may be questions, maybe not. Then we come back and do another presentation. And then down the road, it's like, they may want us to come and ask questions, but they may not. We end up showing up. Sometimes they have questions, sometimes they don't. I think that if we're really serious about this, and I know we all are, that we need to have more conversations. I know last year we had that meeting that took place where it wasn't a quorum. We had 2 school committee members, 2 council members, and conversations. And, I think to have more, to have meetings with everybody there, because I feel like you all are elected, you all have a voice. The challenge is getting everybody together and posting it, right? So I just feel that, and that's where I look at your support. I apologize for the term "you guys," but you have the relationship. You're the elected officials, have the relationship. But I feel like I do my part in terms of working well with the municipal side and Mr. Wazika and Mr. Arnett and all the department heads. But I really could use support in terms of getting the council to the table so that we can have open, honest conversations. And it doesn't mean, it's okay to hear things we don't like or I don't like. But to have those conversations. When those conversations take place, I feel that, it's everybody loses out.
That's
But
right.
anyways,
No, I think it's great. Like I said, just having the town and the school together is wonderful. So that's my 2 cents.
thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Murray?
So I think it's a great idea as well. And you had mentioned, I don't know if it was at the work session or not, but about pairing up the district
Right.
representatives. And I
Right.
think that was,
Yeah.
and I think it's good because we're working within our districts in unison, but we're in small groups. And so I think that keeping it manageable and having that direct pipeline, and that's going to have payoff, I think, on other things in the future, because other things are going to come up. The better we have that dialogue and we have an understanding, It's not just the budget we deal with here. I think the only thing I have on, as we move into the budget season, I haven't been in clarity through a budget season on this side with schools, so, but I have had budget experience, obviously, working municipal, is as we move in, because I know we tend to get the budget and we're looking through on the line items, which I will do again, but highlighting, I think one of the things we don't get, and correct me if I'm wrong, is sort of the wants, the needs, and what the actual allocation is. So there's a lot of background discussion, right?
Yeah.
And obviously, Sarah, I'm sure, has discussions with administrators saying, listen, I know what you want, but here, tell me what you need, and then here's what we can do. What I actually would like to see as a school committee member is maybe just a boiled down list of some of those wants versus needs versus the allocation, because I think what we miss in the process was so focused on trying to drill down for the taxpayer. We miss things like the MIS being underfunded because they're saying what we really need is this, or what we really want is this, what we really need is that, but this is what you gave us. And we don't know on this side of the table, like really what you really want or need. And sometimes the want really is a need, you just mask it, right? So I guess if we had some sort of boiled down, simple sort of strategy going in per department, and I know it's potentially more work, and tell me if it's too much more, But I think it would be helpful from this side, as opposed to just looking at random line items, and I'm only speaking for myself, going through that budget,
Yeah.
and not understanding the full depth of a very complex school system. I think being able to vote better on the budget and explain it as a representative helps
Sure.
me.
We can do, I mean, and I think we did this, but we can do an overview. So I'll be honest, last year, we did talk about like the request of personnel. And I believe it was like 32 or 33 personnel, right, were requested. And because of the budget situation, because of, certain things that were going on, we just went to the administrators and said, like, myself, I'll own it, we just cut most of that out. But we did present a number to the council, to the school committee. But we can come back in categories and we can look at that and say, hey, these are the things that we'd like to have. There's a challenge with that too, because what is the public, you know what I mean? Like everything we do, there's a challenge. So I think how we frame it is so crucial, because I remember going, and not to pick McDonald's again for the third time, but I remember going to McDonald's and somebody, when we talked about even the 33 staff, like all they went off of is like, how could you even, you know what I mean? Like again, just, so I agree with that. I think we can definitely do that with a presentation and kind of frame it and go by department and needs. I'm going to say I went through questions. So we had asked questions last year. Certain people had written questions to us. We shared them with everybody. But there were questions about, it was ironic because there were questions about technology and the monies we're spending. And so I think that,
Yeah, and I say the point too, because I'm not only a school committee member, I'm a member of the public of the town. And I know being on the other side,
yeah,
we have to boil things down and sort of like running an operation here. We have to convey in a very concise way to the general public on why we need the money we need to run the operations. And so the better we can do that and boil that down and sort of say, hey, we started here already. This is what we really would like. This is what we really need. And this is sort of what we're allocating, because we understand the taxpayer concern, right? We've done that.
Yeah.
Sometimes we don't realize that work happens in the background. Nobody sees it.
Yeah.
So what they see on the table has already been shaved.
Yeah.
And quite a bit. And so I think as we get into these sessions, that's a perfect opportunity to say, hey, we are considering your concerns. But in the end of the day, it takes a certain amount of money to run an operation. And this is it.
Yeah. I mean, we can, but to answer your question, we can definitely do that. I'll give you an example. I say this all the time. I can tell you when it gets cold out that I'm going to have parents at the high school complain to me that their children are in classrooms that are 98 degrees. And that same day, I'm going to get a parent complain to me that my daughter just texted me, it's 48 degrees. And we tweak things, but this is the reality, right? So I'm like, I hear exactly what you're saying. We can do that. And I think also too, and I know this is your first time with it, but we also respond so that if, Mrs. Patno says, I'd like to see this, or Mr. Pearson, I'd like to see this, we'll do that too. So as we go through the process, and that's why I want to start this conversation sooner. If we had documents, if I could say to you, this is where we're at today, this is our gut feeling, because part of this conversation too is that I'm sure I hear lots of things out there. And so I'm not going to promulgate rumors, but I hear about percentages thrown out that people can't tolerate moving, they don't want to tax more than this. And I want to early on, because we do all like you're right, we do the budget work, we come here, people ask questions, but to have a strong opinion when we get into February or March, for me, it's too late. I want to know where the committee stands, and without putting people, but I guess, that's a stupid thing. You're going to put people on the spot, but I need to know where the committee stands, because our point is to come forward with a budget that addresses the needs of our students, right? And that was something that, I don't want to put words in Ms. Mandrelli, but that's a constant mantra that she said. We're putting forward a budget that addresses the needs of our students, right? And it wasn't on these wish lists, but we felt that would allow us to address the needs of our students. And so we need to have a lot more conversation, like Mr. Pearson said, we do this 12 months a year, but sooner than later. So there's a lot that we're going to have to discuss and talk about, and some tough decisions. But at the end of the day, we still have a responsibility to move our students forward and to support that vision of the graduate, right? At least I know I can't say, well, we'd love to do it, but we just don't have the money. At some point, we have to And I know it's a bigger topic than tonight, but we have to figure this out, you know, as a state. So, but we will definitely do that.
So that's doable.
Yeah.
That's what I heard. It's
definitely.
doable.
Yeah,
All
yeah,
right.
definitely. We do that and if we don't present it, then I apologize.
Mr. Florio, what do you got?
This is so familiar, Mr. Levis. Every year since since you've been hired, we hear the same thing. And we do it. We do it, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, so I have a couple of comments. The first is I have heard that this is going to be a tough year for us, even if we were to go to the cap. So I guess my main concern is there has to be, before we even go to the public with what we think our budget is, we need to get some assurance from the town council that they're on board with what we're talking about. And where they're prepared to go. And that's sort of almost very early on. Right. That meeting we had last year with just a small group, I think we can advertise a Saturday meeting for everyone who wants to come, but I think that's the kind of stuff that needs to happen before we even go out to the districts, before we even say, by the way, this is what we need. Because the public always hears what we need, and it's always going to be more, always going to be so much more. Our needs are always so much more than what the cap will deliver, quite honestly. We all know that. I've sat on this committee and seen so many things get cut. The teachers that have been here a long time, the administrators, they all know that. You can put a whole list up of this is the stuff that's been lost. And really it always comes down to the bottom line. What share are we going to get from the taxes that are the ultimate amount that we ultimately agree on? What is the share going to come back to schools? We are going to have some tough years. We've said this in the past, and we'll say it again. Those years when we were level funded, when we got increases in funding on the funding formula, have caused a huge hurt in this community for our schools. I personally don't foresee us not going to the cap every year in the near future. I don't see how we can survive without doing that. Or we will have the same thing that happens where we will be forced to cut things that will hurt so badly that it will mean the future of our children and our schools in this town. So, but we first of all have to get the town side to, the town council to meet with us. And it can't be the workshop, the one workshop that we have, that we present our budget and they go, yeah, we have some questions or not. It has to be a series. And so I kind of think that we have to back into the vote and then back into when do we go out to the public and come up with a calendar just like we came up for with the necessity for construction and say, as soon as possible, we start to need some mini work sessions, whatever works, Saturday mornings, whatever, that are open to the public, that the council and the town side people and our side people start really looking at the numbers. Not the minutia, the little details, but the big picture of the numbers. Because I have this saying, if you give me the money, we can spend it, and it won't be spent in a bad way. It'll always be spent for the betterment of kids. And the town side is the same way. I'm sure there are department heads that would say, you could give me as much money as I possibly could get, and I wouldn't waste it, because we're so underfunded on both sides of the street. So I'm worried that we'll end up in the same place we were last year, and I don't want that to happen. But I also want to be realistic, and I want the town council to be realistic with us and be honest in front of everyone before it's that little bit of 1 week discussion of them saying, well, we can't go to the cap, and we have to do X, and we can't tax our citizens this much. We need our public to come forward and say, we get it. And if it means to be taxed to the full bite for several years, and I think that's the piece that's missing. We don't know where the end is. You know, is it going to get better in 5 years or 4 years if we go to the cap? You know, will that get us through? Or is this something that's going to happen for the next 10 years because, you know, things are what they are? So those are my concerns. I'm hopeful that the communication between the town side and our side, administratively wise, not the town council or the elected officials on this side or the town council side, are starting that conversation, and you're working together and you're being honest. Yeah. And now, as elected officials, we have to be honest as well. And we have to make that agreement before we even go out to the public, because we can make a case and say, this is what we need, this is what we need, this is what we need. And the people will say, yes, 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 but it's not going to mean anything if we can't afford that need. So, or because we don't get the money one way or the other. So I don't know what the answer to it is, but it's an extremely frustrating thing. But I think we definitely need a calendar, and we need to back up those dates from when that election is for the budget, and figure out that we need this many meetings to even make it work.
Yeah, I just want to be clear that we meet on a regular basis, and Ms. Mandrelli meets probably on a weekly basis with her counterpart, Mr. Arnett, or Mr. Wazika, so that I can guarantee you that we have that dialogue and ongoing. But what really matters is, you know, like, so we talk about the council, but for first, I really need to provide you with data, but then to see where, because I think it's fair to see where we stand, and not saying that we don't stand united, but I want to make sure before we go to the council, and then hopefully have that same conversation, because, and early on, you're right, because I want the people to know this is where we're at, early on, not say this is our budget, blah, 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 do all these presentations, have a few questions, and then it gets to crunch time, and then it's squirrely time, you know what I mean? Like, I want that to be early on.
Yeah,
myself,
I echo what you just said, because there's two parts of this. There's a numbers problem, and then there's a political issue of having the political will to actually tell the truth on what the numbers are. And that's always been a problem in this town. And part of what, you know, I've said before and others here have said is projecting long-term sustainability plan, you know, a 5 to 10 year fiscal plan, which still hasn't happened. And you know my position on this. I've advocated for trying to see if, you know, we could do a joint plan, which I know our numbers are volatile and it's always difficult, but it's something I know in Warwick they are trying to attempt to do, with some, you know, obviously perspectives on what they're going to get from the state aid. And I think the biggest thing for the taxpayer, including myself, who pays, all of us, we pay taxes too, and taxes go up on us as well, is predictability, right? If you're going to charge us the 4% per year, you know, what does that look like? And at what point are we going to say, you know, what do we get out of it? So I don't think, you know, I think as a whole, and just living in the community, people are against education, people are against the services they have, but there's a certain limit they want to pay for them. And so we have to respect that. And so to the opposite end, we have to respect the fact that we're properly planning for the future. And that goes into community planning and the whole bit. But, and I'll cut that off because I want to just talk on. But I agree. Earlier the conversation on the sort of the political end of this, while you're still working your numbers on your end, I think is important because it's going to take a teamwork. Because you had mentioned at the last meeting, we're your ambassadors, right? Mm-hmm. We need to, in order to help you do your job, be out there educating early and communicating with the community and doing our job as elected officials. Mm-hmm. So that's all.
Anything else? We're good on this side? Anything from the public on this? Seeing none, I guess you get to talk again.
But I promise I'll be quick. So the Triple E update, I just want to say that, you know, we continue to do the flex scheduling, whatever the Department of Health calls it. I'm very, you know, and that's been working well. After the aerial spraying, I had Mr. Martin and his staff went out and they cleaned. Not that we have to do it, but I think it's better for people to feel more safe. We cleaned, they cleaned the playground equipment, so they did that. I had a text from Mr. Martin by like 10 o'clock today. Everything had been cleaned, and this time expanded out to Western Coventry. So I appreciate that.
I heard the planes last night over my house.
So, and we'll continue to go until there's a hard frost, you know, and I think, we're trying to balance, we're just trying to balance with that. But I think we're doing an incredible job with that, and, our nurses have been doing a great job. I sent out, updates from Department of Health. I think right now, I know the Colonel has been sharing, they've been sending things out through, Code Red, anything about spraying and all that, and, we've allowed him to do that. But I think we've done our part. We continue to do our part, and I hope that the community is okay with how we're handling it. I feel that we're one of the first districts to change that. There's still night games. I drive by different places when I leave here, and I see people out playing, even in town, and it's not my decision or not my responsibility, but I think we're doing an excellent job, and I hope the committee feels that we've responded to the needs of the community from what our responsibilities are. So I don't know if anybody has anything about that, but the other one is we had Dana DeVerna come before you, the Coventry Substance Abuse Task Force initiatives, and Dana was also helpful in helping us with the student assistance counselor piece. But she's putting together workshops for our sixth graders, and really wants to bring stuff down to the fifth graders. But she's also going to be around the vaping and substance abuse, but also around the young woman that works with her. I'm drawing a blank on her last name, but her name's Kayla. She's going to be doing some work with our new SRO, Miss Officer Nickerson, just on the effective use of social media at the middle school. We had some issues with that early on in the year, which we're also working on digital citizenship in the middle school. So I think it supports that. But she's been an incredible resource. I know that she's looking at, the emphasis has gone down to really trying to be more preventative, and the money's more preventive. So we're really bringing it down to like the sixth graders and fifth graders. It's interesting to see what happens with the recent, I live in Massachusetts, and, the governor took a strong stand for 4 months, no products. And I know Governor Raimondo, didn't take as strong a stand, but, eliminated a lot of the flavors. And so I just wanted to say that she's been doing, the Substance Abuse Task Force has been phenomenal in supporting us. And I wanted to thank them publicly, but to make you aware that you'll be seeing more initiatives. They're also probably going to have Chris Herron. Many of you probably heard Chris Herron played basketball for Durfee High School, played for the Celtics, and his story. And he goes around the country, speaks incredible story. He also has a couple of treatment programs. He has one in Seekonk, Mass, and I think one in Portsmouth, Rhode Island. But they're going to have him come in as a speaker, and we'll do an assembly. He might come to the high school and speak. We might be able to get him to do a parent. Just a powerful story. So I just wanted to highlight that. This is an interesting one. The next one, Culinary Arts Program. So there's going to be a week where the seniors are moving to the new location, and where they'll be down. So Mr. Robillard Bob Robillard, Department of Human Service Director, was over at the high school for another meeting the other day, and he mentioned, what do you think about that week that they're down, that we can offer the seniors an opportunity to come to the high school at the Naughty Oakland for lunch? I said, I thought it's a great idea, but I said, let's go talk to the boss. So we went down to Culinary Arts, met with Chef Marcel, and he thought it's a great idea. So they're going to work that out. And I'm probably stealing some thunder from Mr. Robillard, but he has other ideas. Like he wants to do a senior citizen prom. And so we talked about how we could have our career, we could have our career tech, the cosmetology, do people's nails and stuff.
Those are my peeps.
We could help them, right, for the seniors. So, excellent. So he's going to do the same. He wants to do the same thing.
Oh, that's awesome.
But he'll be, yeah. So he'll talk, but he'd like to do it and see if he could do it even at the high school. So that he said that usually they do it at these centers or whatever, but if we could do it at the high school, I said, I'm sure we can make that happen. But I just think that highlights, you know, and pretty soon the new police station DHS building open, our students will be there. I'm hearing they have an incredible kitchen in there, and they'll be working out of there doing more. So there's a lot of these partnerships and just the flexibility on both ends and right. And the other thing is that the culinary arts program, and I just talked to them. I was there for lunch today, and but I was talking to the chef. I haven't talked to Miss Ferguson. I don't think about this, but what we want to do is want them to have like bake some pastries, and then we want to go around with coffee and another beverage to all the municipal, like the police, the fire, and just to say thank you. And then we'd love to be able to go to the commercial, like down Tioga, and pick some businesses and just, you know, have the van and have people come out, or we go in. I just think it's a goodwill favor, but it's also something that people really appreciate. And Natalie Kelbeck approached me today and asked me when we could do it. So there's just a lot of positive things that are going on.
But that's nice because that gets the school out to the community.
Right.
and, you know,
Right.
really, I
Right.
think that's great.
So that would be something that we do. The next one is just, not just, but the Student Assistance Counselor. We have a Student Assistance Counselor. It's Lauren Cohen. And I will get Lauren come to one of the meetings to introduce you to you. But I want to make you aware, she has an office. It's right in where the guidance is, and she's working with our staff and coordinating with the 7 Challenges program we have and our own clinical staff, support staff. So she's been a great addition, and we're very appreciative of that. And then the last piece I had is that we received a grant, thanks to Denise Ahern, a little over $10,000. And, you know, we've done a lot of work, obviously, with early childhood the last few years, received a lot of recognition. But this is a grant to help 3 districts in the state received it. We're like the second cohort. But working on transitioning students from pre-K into kindergarten, and it also includes the public pre-Ks, the state pre-K. So we're partnering with one pre-K, but looking at systems. How do we share information? How do we better transition students into kindergarten? It includes a team of individuals from both private pre-K, our pre-K, and our kindergarten. And they're going to be part of attending these summits. Actually, I think they're attending one next Wednesday. But it's going to, you know, there's money in there for our teachers for subs. There's money in there for materials for parents. So the whole idea is to help facilitate that whole transition process, because we know that the sooner we intervene and the more effective the transition is into kindergarten, then, you know, those students have a much better chance of being successful in life. And so I wanted to thank her for that. She's not here tonight, but again, you know, like Lori wrote, when Lori wrote the grant for the SRO at the middle school, right? That offsets half of his salary. You know, we received, we're part of a program through the Department of Ed that Don was at with CLE, and it's about our MTSS. There's only 9 districts in the state, or 9 schools that receive that. So, you know, we received that big grant from the Renown Foundation, but we have all these other grants that add up, and it allows us to do the important work that our operating budget doesn't. So I just wanted to highlight that. So I know it took more time, but that's it for me.
Any questions for Mr. Levis? Anything from the public on anything that he?
I have one
Mr.
quick.
Mr.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just really quick. When are the breakfasts? Are they having breakfast at the senior center again? Or?
Oh, not yet. They will, but they're not in there yet. So once they get, I watched part of it. I kind of fast forward to the town council, but I know they were hoping to get an, I think, what's it called, a temporary operating certificate or something
Certificate of occupancy.
for by the end of next week, or
Yeah.
maybe.
Wow.
But I don't know what that means, so I don't want to.
I'm sorry, Don. And the last thing, I just wanted to say that,
$3
so my daughter Abby, I had a discussion with her, and she said that in her WIN class, which I guess stands for What I Need, they did have the social media, and I was very, again, as a speaking as a parent,
Yeah.
I was glad to hear that, and that we're trying to take a proactive approach
Yeah.
to the vaping, to social media, and educate at the earlier levels, including my daughter's. My daughter's now in 6th, which is a nerve-wracking time as a parent to kind of transition them over. So it's great that we're kind of being proactive and having the substance abuse task force in the mix of a very scary time with vaping.
Yeah.
I think is a real asset. So that's all.
Very quickly, during the Vision of the Graduate presentation, there was a question about post-secondary data. And it took me some time to get it. And then when I got it, they were gone, so I waited to the end. On the school report card, Department of Ed has a school report card. There's a tab that says post-secondary participation. And if you, and I can send the link. And when you go to the bottom, what it does is it organizes 1 year out for a particular grade level, a particular class. So right now it's showing the class of 16, 17, that year, 1 year out. It's just kids who attend a 2 or 4 year program. So it doesn't capture kids in the military. It doesn't capture kids in the workforce, but students who go on to some post-secondary education, it organizes them into students who went to Rhode Island public schools, Rhode Island private schools, out-of-district schools, and then kids who did not enroll anywhere. And that information is, and I'm not gonna go through all of it now, but it goes through all the different subgroups in our community, gender, socioeconomics, disabilities, and it is pulled from the National Student Clearinghouse. I guess they can pull the data from the colleges and try and basically align it to our school. And I do recall them saying that I think the vision years out would be able to follow a cohort of kids 1, 2, 3, 4 years out. So if a student goes to a 4-year school, on year 1, they're enrolled in 4-year school. We want to see, did they stay enrolled in the 4-year school in year 2? Did they stay enrolled in year 3? Did they stay year 4? Did they graduate? And if we see a drop down somewhere along the line, that becomes data that we can use to sort of better prepare our kids for school. So I can send the link, but the data is there. So we don't have to do anything special to get it. We just have to.
Just have to follow it, that's all.
Correct.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Thank you. Would you mind sending that?
I'll send it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
And about the diplomas at the high school?
What's that?
What about the kids who don't get them?
Oh, yeah, we had that.
Yeah, it doesn't capture, it just captures kids who went to post-secondary education.
Okay. Moving on to 14, citizens' comments. Are there any comments from the citizens gathered? Questions, concerns? Okay, is there a motion to schedule the next meeting?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we schedule the next meeting for October 10th, 2019 at 7 p.m.
I second the second.
Motion, we're getting done.
It's been a long day.
All in favor? All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. And is there a motion to adjourn? I have 9:13.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to adjourn at 9:13.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.